Hello! This version of EuroJOC that I'm creating this demonstration with is the latest version. Most of the techniques have not changed from earlier versions of the software. Let's go over the basics of using EuroJOC. A contract file can contain several JOC projects. Until you're used to using the software, I would suggest that you have a single contract file for each project. Let's show you how to set up a new contract file. So I'm going to go to File, Create New Contract File, and I'm just going to call this New JOC Project 2020. I'm going to save it. Okay, a small box will show up with the additional steps for creating the new contract file. Now, what this is basically you need to go to the Utilities menu and look at each tab on the Preferences form. Okay, so let's go do that. Let's go to Utilities. Let's go to the Preferences form. And for a job in the United States, we are going to display the component costs. We are not going to allow component selection. The rest of this we can leave off. Okay. The system setup is where we choose the unit price book that we're going to be using. There are several different unit price books, you see, and each one of these price books is updated quarterly, so you want to be using the proper unit price book. If you're doing an old project, maybe you want to be using an older unit price book, 2017, 2018, but for now I'm going to use one of the latest versions. Okay, and it's telling us that the unit price book is in dollars, and these are the currency ratios. So if we leave everything 1-to-1, if somebody accidentally chose to display the currency in euros, it would still be the same thing. Let's go back to the system setup. The contract file path is where we can set a path to where we are storing our projects. Many times you want to store this out on a network drive, and if you put that path into this text box, every time you go to open a file, it'll go directly to that network path and you won't have to go through the directory. Okay, so let's look at the currency tab. We've already looked at that. We are going to be pricing everything in dollars, so make sure you have that set correctly. On the coefficients tab, we want to be using the user selected USA version, not the Germany version, and the default coefficient code is going to be AA. Okay, so let's move on. Contacts, you can build a list of all your different contacts in this form. Passwords, this is where you can change your passwords. If you type in your password that got you into the software, it'll let you go in and change your username and your password. Okay, the default values, there's more about this later, but here's where you can set the default KLM value, where you can set the default location, default user 1 value, or the default user 2. There'll be more about that later. The facility information is the information that's printed at the top of each page on the printout. Okay, save form settings is where you can choose to reset the forms. What you do is you uncheck a form, you go into the form, you come out of the form, you go back in, and the form will be reset to its default settings. The city cost indexes, if you're using a national unit price book, you can import the city cost indexes, and you can say you want to do a job in Chicago or a job in LA, and you can tell it to use that city's cost index. You can import the cost indexes from the unit price book. The colors tab is something that you don't have on an older version, but this is where we can set the colors that you're seeing. Okay, so we have done everything we need to do basically in those first two steps. In the font and options, in the system setup, those are the main things. Currency is important also, and coefficients. So these first four tabs are really everything you need to worry about when you set up a new contract file. Okay, so we have a blank contract file. Now what we need to do is we need to add project nodes, and we need to add estimate and proposal nodes. So if we do a left click on the root node and then a right click, we can click on project, add a project. Okay, now it's created a blank project, and we can fill out the name and the project number in the grid. So let's just call this FE, I'm just making this up. Okay, and this is gonna be rehab okay. So you see that that was transferred into the project tree. Now underneath the project node, you'll see that we have an estimate header node and a proposal header node. If we do a left click, this is the key to this. You do a left click on the node, then a right click on the node, and it gives you the options that you have. So you can click on that, and we're going to add an estimate. Okay. Now this is going to be our first estimate. There, we are done. We've got our first contract file set up, and we're ready to start building the estimate. To go into the estimate, all we have to do is double click this node, and you'll see that lock shows up here in this corner. You see this little Schleg lock. While the estimate form is open, you can't change anything on the main form. So now I have my estimate form open, and I can begin building an estimate. That's as far as I'm going to go with this video, and I'll continue in another.